You're in the water loop.
Water loop, water loop, water loop.
You're in the water loop. This is Travis. I'm here with Chad Nelsen, the CEO of the Surfrider Foundation. Chad, how's it going?
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, totally happy to be talking to you. Surfrider Foundation is like my favorite organization. As a surfer myself, as a water person, I care about a lot of different NGOs and organizations and stuff, but nothing's more important to me really than surfing. So really psyched to be talking to you.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. So before we get into like the real hard-hitting questions, the most important one is what's the surf report there in San Clemente? Anything going on today?
After we've had a great run of surf this winter generally, right now there's a big storm that's about to hit. It's supposed to rain like crazy here from now until next Monday, and it's also flat. So no surf, and as we might get into, we're about to head into some polluted runoff.
Yeah. Well, same situation on my end here in Wilmington, North Carolina. There's nothing going on out there. I just looked kind of longer term, and I'm looks like I'll be waiting like a week at least before I'm got something to get in, and that's just when you start climbing up the walls.
Yes. Well, and you guys just had. I mean, we spoke last week. You guys just had a decent run of surf from that nor'easter that came through, didn't you?
Exactly. After that kind of came through and then cleared up, the weather cleared up right away, and there were some nice waves on the backside of the storm. So I guess I can't complain too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Surfrider Foundation, just tell folks that might not be familiar with it, what your organization's all about. What's your mission?
Yeah, so I'll give you the mission statement, and then I'll tell you in English. The mission statement is the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean waves and beaches through a powerful activist network. And what I like about that mission statement is protection and enjoyment. So we're out there protecting our coasts and oceans, but we also celebrate getting out there and recreating. And so we promote all kinds of ocean recreation, surfing obviously included. It talks about where we do it, which is ocean waves and beaches. So we're coastal. We focus on ocean issues, coastal issues, and sort of nearshore land issues. And that's somewhat unique. There's a lot of groups that are either focused on land issues or they're focused on water issues. And we kind of have a foot planted on the sand and in the water. And then it says how, which is powerful activist network. We're a grassroots-based organization, and we've got chapters and local activists and community members around the country and the world working on these issues.
Yeah, I love that you guys have that front and center, the idea that you're doing this because you all personally care about being able to use the ocean and to go surfing and not have to deal with pollution and other problems. You're blatantly saying like, hey, we love to play in the ocean here and ride these waves, so that's why we're doing this work. The whole like local chapter setup is really cool. Here in Wilmington, we have the Cape Fear chapter, and they do lots of good stuff. They just had took people's Christmas trees, drug them out to the dunes, and helped kind of build them, help strengthen those dunes and build them back up. That's always a cool thing to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. We just like you, we try to take that passion people have for surfing and convert that to protection, right? And there's self-interest. You don't want to get sick when you go surfing, and also, I think surfers feel a lot of gratitude for all the fun and good times and the people they know and in the oceans, so they want to give back a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get into this? I mean, I guess you kind of started surfing when you were younger, and then you ended up getting into kind of the environmental field, science and marine biology and stuff like that. How did you get to this seat as directing this organization?
Yeah, it's actually kind of been relatively long road. But I grew up on the coast in Southern California and Laguna Beach. Feel really lucky to have grown up playing in the ocean my entire life. I learned to surf when I was 7 or 8 years old, and was a lifeguard, was fishing, was doing it all. And there were a couple of experiences that kind of growing up in Southern California, which was rapidly urbanizing during the late 70s and early 80s, and that affected got me interested in this. One was when I was 16 years old, just newly minted lifeguard. My buddies were we were getting certified in diving, and Laguna Beach has these rocky reefs and kelp forests, and so we got spear guns, and we were out there trying to spear fish, and we'd come back empty-handed every time, and we thought we were just bad spear fishermen. We didn't know what we were doing, so we talked to the older lifeguards and say, "Hey guys, like, what are we doing wrong? Like, how do we go catch these fish?" And they told us, they were like, "It's fished out. All the fish have been caught." And
Wow.
it was sort of this fatalistic, you should have been here yesterday kind of attitude, and it just struck me as so wrong. Like, wait, the fish are gone? And that was one of these things, like, that was a head scratcher, and it just seemed fundamentally wrong. And actually, skipping ahead a little bit, you flash forward to today, Laguna Beach is now a marine reserve, something Surfrider participated in, and it's teeming with wildlife. So 30 odd years later, it's back, which is awesome. You can, these things are solvable. The other was just watching. It used to be, if you got a cut on your hand, your mom would say, "Hey, go get in the ocean; it'll clean it out." And now, after it rains in Southern California, you can't go in the water for 72 hours because it's polluted. So watching that shift occur, those are like the seminal moments as a kid that sort of made me think, okay, I gotta do something about this. Went to grad school at Duke University in your neck of the woods in Beaufort, North Carolina, at the Marine Lab, and studied coastal environmental management. So that was kind of one of the steps towards getting a career in ocean and coastal protection. I was broke while I was doing that, as most grad students are. So I came home, lived with my parents for the summer, and volunteered at Surfrider while I did odd jobs to make some money. That was where I got a taste of Surfrider in 1995. Got a job here in 1998, over 20 years ago, as a junior environmental program person, and I've just been working my way up the ladder, and about 4.5 years ago got hired as the CEO.
Awesome. What a journey. It's amazing how those paths go for us, right? And just how one thing leads to another, and how you get to where you are today. But you talk to a lot of people that work in water, or in some way, shape, or form, something touched them, like when they were young, right? There was some spark, and usually it was some real personal experience with them and the ocean, or whatever that water might be, that sent them on their way. So I want to talk to you about some of the specific kind of programs, initiatives, and stuff that Surfrider has that kind of catch my attention. And one is this Smartfin program.
Yes.
I was reading about this on your website. Tell me about it. And it seems like it's pretty local there. I wish I could ride around with one of these on my boards. But yeah, what's Smartfin all about?
Hopefully someday you will. Surfers are in the ocean more than almost any other user group out there. There's more beachgoers. There's people out, but surfers tend to, a lot of surfers surf 100 days a year. They're in the water a couple times a week. They're in the water year round. So in many ways, they're sort of like the perfect group of people to do citizen science or monitoring of the ocean. Smartfin was actually invented by a guy who's a non-surfer. He's a excuse me. He was a doctor from New York City, and he was worried about climate change and ocean acidification, and he had this brainstorm. Hey, there's these surfers along these coasts all over the world. Like, why don't we try to tap into their sort of presence to start monitoring ocean conditions? And so he conceptualized this idea. He partnered with Scripps, and what they're doing is essentially they're building a surfboard fin that is a oceanographic monitoring device. So, the idea is the fin can measure your location, GPS. It can measure ocean temperature. The goal is to continue to add sensors. They want to be able to measure. The holy grail is acidification, pH.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also talking about salinity and sort of some measurement of water visibility. So the goal is to turn surfers into these sort of passive, monitoring devices all over the world, and engage those surfers in sort of the citizen science.
Yeah. And then so like, somebody comes in from a session and then that they can just, download that data somehow, whether it be through like USB or Bluetooth or who knows, however that works, huh?
Yeah.
And then that feeds into probably some central database where those guys can take a look at what's going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So you can monitor the water's edge because people walk down like we do with water quality monitoring and scoop a little sample of water, and either equipment or research vehicles can kind of monitor up to the surf zone. But that surf zone is a important area and also really hard to measure because the surf's it's destructive of instruments. Boats can't go in there, so the surfers are also kind of measuring this zone that is hard to measure and important in all these systems. So
yeah, so it's kind of like in a pilot developmental phase right now.
So we're sort of at the bleeding edge. They're trying to miniaturize all of this technology, get it into a surfboard fin, and also make that fin sort of perform as well as a normal surfboard fin within reason. And so it's been challenging. So they've been demoing it in San Diego with our San Diego chapter, which is the home of Scripps, the Oceanographic Institute. So that's, the goal is to get it figured out and then, expand.
Yeah.
Nationally
cool.
and ultimately globally.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll wherever there's a sign up sheet for, coastal North Carolina, I'll put my name on that and hope to get one. That would be really cool to be part of that.
Yeah. Cool.
Also want to talk about, this issue of plastic pollution, right? Not to get too depressing with the conversation here,
Sure.
but it's a big, huge problem. It's all over the news and all over social media, which I guess is good. It's really raising awareness for people. What's Surfrider's take on the plastic pollution problem, on the solutions? What are you guys kind of doing about it?
Yeah, no, it is a huge problem. Actually, one of the people credited with sort of realizing the extent of this problem was a guy named and had plankton nets out on his boat, and he started finding more and more plastic. He was sort of surprised, out in the sort of deep blue ocean, and was like, what's it doing out here? He got his start as a volunteer at Surfrider in Seal Beach doing water quality monitoring. So we're
all right.
Out of the sort of citizen science that helped raise this global awareness about this problem. So yeah, it is a problem. I mean, we partner with another great group called 5 Gyres that's been crossing all the major oceanographic gyres, collecting data on plastic, and it's ubiquitous. They call it a plastic smog, which I think is an apt term. It's just everywhere. Those particles. So and it's having ecosystem impacts and potentially ultimately human health impacts. So it's a big problem, and it is and on one hand it's depressing. On the other hand, it's another one of these cases, and this is why I'm an optimist about all this stuff. These are all solvable problems. We know it's not like we don't know the science. It's not like we don't know what to do. It's just a matter of deciding to do it.
Do it, yeah.
And for us at Surfrider, we have like 3 or 4 ways that we're tackling this problem. We do about 1,000 beach cleanups a year around the country. Out there every year picking up trash, and it's funny. Beach cleanups we're not going to beach clean up our way out of this problem. We're scratching the surface on the scale of it, but what those beach cleanups do is they raise awareness for people. We collect the data on what kind of plastics we're finding, so that can inform policy. So what are we finding on the beaches? Straws, bottle caps, water bottles, bags, and wrappers. Yeah. So let's go tackle those things and try to get those out of the system.
Sure.
We do policy work. So last year we passed 52 laws and policies in local communities around the country, banning foam, plastic bags, cigarette smoking on beaches, because cigarettes are the #1 item found on beaches worldwide. And trying to identify these commonly found single-use plastics that frankly we don't need.
Right.
And getting those out of the system. So we're doing that. We work with business. We have a program called Ocean Friendly Restaurants. We're encouraging restaurants to eliminate single-use plastics and kind of give them an ocean-friendly certification. So imagine last time you ordered takeout.
Oh, I know.
And at the end of the meal, you look over on the counter and there's this giant mound of crap. You know, they've got 6 of those bags with the spork and the napkin in them and all, you know.
Yeah, the bag it came in, then the plastic container that the food itself was in, and then you've got the little utensil kit, and then like the packets of this sauce and that sauce that you don't even use.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, it's terrible.
So we're trying to sort of tackle that side of it as well. And then we do a ton of outreach and education, just trying to get people to change their habits. You know, so personal behavior, outreach and education, law and policy, and working with business. For us, that's kind of, if we can get all those things humming, we feel like we can kind of disrupt what is, you know, a sort of a vicious cycle of, frankly, lazy consumerism in some respects.
Oh, sure. And the one of the big ways you guys do this is then through that local level, right? Through that chapter model, you guys kind of have the tools there for your local chapters to then go talk to restaurants in their community or talk to their local elected officials or organize that beach cleanup. I mean, that's really how all that's deployed, right?
Exactly. So we build, you know, we have this network of these, we have 81 chapters and about 100 high school and college clubs. And so we'll put together a toolkit on how to pass a plastic bag ordinance in your local community.
I just saw that on your guys' Twitter account, actually.
Yeah. And, you know, and so the idea with the network model at Surfrider is, let's, you know, instead of you having to figure out what a plastic bag ordinance should look like for your community, why don't we learn from the ones we've been making and then share that intelligence across the network so we can, you know, spread it out. And then our goal is to scale those up. So California in 2016 passed a proposition on the ballot to ban single-use plastic bags. It was the first state in the country to do that, now at a 5-cent fee for paper. So start at the local level, get critical mass, scale it up to the state and the federal level. That's kind of our model.
Yeah. I tell you, it's like it's shocking to me, you know, when I visit the beach and I just find plastic, you know, like New Year's Day, January 1st, you know, my wife and kids, we went out to the beach mid-morning and kids were going to go skimboarding. It's like this beautiful day. It's the new year, and there's just like a plastic cup sitting right on the sand. And I just don't understand, like in 2019 at that moment, you know, like who's doing that? Who's just throwing trash on the ground and not picking it up? You know, so of course we always find that stuff and take it out with us, but it's just kind of always shocks me, you know, that people have that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the sort of Crying Indian advertisement of the late 70s, early 80s, but you know, there was this ad that was really famous in the country, and it had this sort of Indian standing by a highway and like, which was covered with litter, you know, and it was a don't litter ad, kind of like respect the country and our land, and it was pretty effective, I think. But you know, each generation, like, we had to stop littering, which we still do, obviously.
Yeah. And
then I feel like our generation is sort of like the recycling generation, which we thought is, oh, that's being a good steward. And I think the next generation is going to be a elimination of single-use plastic generation. You know, I already see my kids, they'll go to get a soft drink or something, and they won't get the lid in the straw. I'm like,
yeah, that's all.
You know, we're slowly progressing, I think, hopefully, towards a more sustainable, you know, future when it comes to plastic use.
Yeah. Another area that you guys are really active, one of your big focus areas is this offshore drilling.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of been rekindled under the Trump administration here, where they want to, you know, do offshore drilling really all up and down the eastern and west coast seaboards. And I think the concerns are pretty obvious, but I'd love to hear you explain why Surfrider opposes this, and I think why so many groups oppose it, and there's a lot of bipartisan opposition to it. You know, especially here along the East Coast, where you've got a lot of Republican governors and other legislators. They're even like, we don't want this on our coastline.
Yeah, you're right. And so the Trump administration, just over a year ago, proposed opening up 90% of U.S. waters to offshore drilling. So that's Maine to Florida, the eastern Gulf of Mexico that's been off limits, kind of the Gulf side of Florida, the West Coast from California to Alaska. A pretty huge overreach in our opinion. And the way this works is the executive branch, the Department of Interior, the president's staff, creates a 5-year leasing plan. This is the mechanism by which oil drilling's opened. So as of today, there's remnant drilling in California that's over 30 years old. There's drilling in the Gulf, and there's some drilling in Alaska. The Eastern Seaboard right now is free of offshore drilling, and as is the Pacific Northwest coast. So that's the threat. We keep learning this lesson, right? Like there's drilling is spilling, as we say. So there's both catastrophic spills, the BP oil spill in the Gulf being an obvious one, Exxon Valdez. There was one in San Francisco Bay when a tanker crashed into a bridge, the Costco Busin. 2015, there was a pretty big 350,000 gallon spill in Santa Barbara. So these are happening, and they're catastrophic. But there's small scale spilling every day. Over 10,000 small oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico since BP.
Wow.
So it's chronic. And then you have the infrastructure, the refineries, and all of the coastal infrastructure, the piers, the pipelines that go into this on top of that, not to mention global warming and climate change and all the other things. So, huge impacts to our coastline. And at the end of the day, we don't need it. We're exporting more oil than we're bringing in. That oil isn't U.S. oil. Those companies can, take that oil and sell it to anyone they want. And tourism and recreation is about 12 times bigger, a larger economy than offshore drilling. And the claim of jobs is sort of also false because they're highly specialized jobs. They're going to be people from Texas flying into your coastlines to work off. It's not like the mom and pop are going to pick up a job on an oil rig. So I think coastal communities sort of have nothing to gain and everything to lose. And I think that's why you see this bipartisan opposition. So, if you run a restaurant, a pier concession, a hotel on the coast, on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, there's very little upside, regardless of your political ideology, to having offshore drilling off your coastline, and there's a lot of potential downside. So we've seen coastal communities across the U.S. Pass resolutions. In fact, every single coastal community in South Carolina in 2015, when Obama considered the same thing, passed a resolution in opposition to drilling. Your hometown, Wilmington, did the same, which something that Surfrider was involved in. And so we really have seen it's the encouraging part, pretty massive opposition. Almost every coastal governor, with the exception of a couple, Alaska, Maine, and Georgia, have, and I don't know if that's changed since last fall's election, but have been opposed to offshore drilling. So, the impacts are pretty obvious, and the threat isn't worth the costs aren't worth the benefits, and so that's why we're out there, opposing this. That said, powerful interests with hundreds of millions of dollars pushing for this in DC, and that's part of the reason why, and an administration that is supportive. So we're trying to build a groundswell of local and state level opposition to pressure the decision makers to keep our coastline safe and not open up drilling. Got about 100 activists flying into DC at the end of February to talk to the Department of Interior, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, to make our case.
It seems like it's basically the companies that stand to profit off this, and then the political people in the administration that are for it, and it seems pretty overwhelmingly across the board with others that are like, no, we don't want this for all those reasons you outlined. So where does it stand? Isn't it kind of frozen or something right now? They're still evaluating and.
Yeah, so they have a pretty thorough process to make this plan, which is good. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is part of the Department of Interior, ultimately makes the decision. They put out the 90% plan. They did a bunch of hearings last year around the country, took public comment period, and then they're supposed to come out with what they call the proposed plan, round 2. That could come out any day now. I have a feeling the shutdown might have slowed that down a little bit. Interestingly enough, the Interior staff that are working on this got pulled back early. So
yeah.
So that made us think this is a priority. We're waiting for round 2. So in round 2, the map will shrink. Some subset of the 90%, which is everything, will be proposed for round 2. So will Southern California be on the map? Will the Carolinas? Likely, because that part's that's been an area that folks have targeted. Will the Alaska or the Eastern Gulf be on the map? We don't know. That will trigger another round of public hearings and public comments, and we're geared up and ready to marshal huge local opposition to anywhere, because for us, sort of drilling anywhere is a threat everywhere, in our opinion.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of signs just around town here opposing drilling. Don't drill NC and all that kind of stuff. So we're ready. Want to shift to a product that you guys put out that I've always been a fan of, and that's kind of the State of the Beach report. And it goes through a little bit like state by state, and it's like a report card on kind of coastal policy and coastal health, I think. And I love it because as a communications person, I think it presents that information in like a really clear, digestible, non-wonky kind of way. And you can just go to your state and see what's up. So I wanted you to kind of talk about that document and why you all put it out, what's in there.
Sure. Well, that's great to hear that it's working. So thank you. So the basis behind this report is, are states preparing themselves effectively for a future with climate change and sea level rise, which is going to bring increased coastal erosion, an issue that states like North Carolina, frankly, have been dealing with for many years because of the mobile nature of barrier islands. Are we taking steps to plan for a future that's going to keep our beaches healthy and our tourism economies and everything else going? So we sort of rate states across a number of different categories. Are they paying attention to climate change? This has been a challenge in North Carolina.
Yeah, it has been.
Politically. Do they have policies on shoreline armoring? Because if you armor the beach in the face of coastal erosion, you're going to destroy your beaches. Are they doing adaptive management plans to think about moving back in the face of sea level rise? And so we sort of do an analysis across these different policies for each state, rate them, and then kind of roll that up into an overall grade. And then put that out, like you're saying, what grade does your state get in terms of its preparation? And the unfortunate thing that we're finding is a lot of the southeastern states, which are the ones that have the highest likelihood of being impacted because you have low elevation coastlines, barrier islands, are also some of the states that are sort of least prepared to address these issues. So we're trying to raise awareness to that.
A lot of that lack of preparation has been for political reasons, like you've said, where they've just, the climate change denial phenomenon and just not wanting to deal with that stuff. I get the sense, in North Carolina, there's such a massive real estate value to what's built along the Outer Banks, all those homes and all those communities. And I think that probably extends down throughout the Southeast U.S. So I think there's been some, as reports have come out about the vulnerability of that real estate and the money that could be lost, maybe that's motivated a little bit of attention to it because there's been some slight improvement, I think.
Yeah.
When during the year does that report come out?
It comes out every November.
Okay. All right. So
actually, we've been trying to push it up to have it coincide with the hurricane season. Partly because that's when we see a lot of these serious impacts.
No doubt. Hurricane Florence, the eye of Hurricane Florence passed 2 miles from my house last September. And we got over 30 inches of rain here.
Massive flooding.
Yeah, incredible historic flooding, but yeah, climate change fueled that storm. I mean, there's no doubt, and we're just going to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, sort of in a different realm outside of ours. On the West Coast, we're seeing the severity of these fires, and it's very analogous to the hurricanes, right? Happening quicker, happening, and these things are gaining sort of strength more quickly than anticipated, and then having impacts that are just at levels that we haven't seen before. Both climate fueled sort of, natural disasters.
Yeah. One of the things I wonder about with climate change and sea level rise and erosion of coastlines and stuff, from a surfing perspective, is how the breaks are going to change, and like where this was always a wave right here. This was the spot for decades, and
Yeah.
now it's like too deep, or or that sandbar has been blown out, or whatever it might be. So I think, just from that surfing perspective, it's some of the impacts of climate change are concerning, and I'm just kind of curious to keep my eye on the evolving health of of wave spots and stuff. What are you seeing with that?
Well, it's as surf spots are very sensitive to sort of the conditions at the beach, the swell direction, and the tides.
Yeah.
And I've heard someone call future sea level rise, which is estimated to be permanent high tide, which is, I think, a good way to think about it. In fact, we were just out last week flying with a group called Lighthawk, looking at king tides. We have these really high tides in January and December around the country, and it's a good, they're the highest high tides of the year, and it's a really good indication of what our coast will look like in the future. And so, yeah, I mean, some surf spots will be flooded. So if they only break at low tide, they might be gone because 3 feet of water might be enough to shut them down. In theory, it could open up new spots.
True.
That said, I think our response to sea level rise is going to have a huge impact on the quality of surfing. So if we armor the coastlines with seawalls and don't let that water naturally migrate in and impact beaches, we're going to lose surf spots.
Yeah.
No question. So I think it's more likely how we respond to them is what's going to cause the problem. Apologies for the date.
Yeah, no problem. Kind of last couple questions here. I'm just curious as why you think surfers are such good environmental advocates. Why are they uniquely equipped or uniquely predisposed to take on these types of fights and work?
I think surfers are actually sort of natural scientists. They're citizen scientists. I mean, as I was saying, I've got a tide app on my phone. I'm looking at swell directions and periods and storms around the country. They know about water temperatures, and they're affected by water quality. They're looking at these beaches every day. Oh, the sandbars have moved. They're really good right now. And so just by virtue of being out there and participating in the sport, they're super in tune with the coastal environment. So that makes them great advocates because when they notice change and they understand all these fundamentals about oceanography and coastal processes. So I think there's that. I also think that there's a selfish impact. They're going to get sick, or their families, kids are going to get sick. So there's a personal motivation. And the other thing is people are intrigued by surfers like they are with other sort of outdoor athletics. I mean, some of the pro surfers are doing extremely impressive things out there. So surfing is an attractive and interesting sport, which is a great way of luring other people into caring about our oceans. Sort of like the canary in the coal mine, and also sort of like the charismatic sort of critter, megafauna of the coasts. And so I think they are a perfect advocate. And frankly, if surfers aren't advocating for our coasts, who is?
Right. And yeah, and surfers are so passionate about it, and they can bring that conviction, I think, to the advocacy and to the cleanups and whatever it might be. Lastly, Chad, I wanted to ask you, it's an important question of what people can do to help people who might listen to this and might not already be active in Surfrider. What types of things would you encourage people out there to do that want to do more for our beaches and coasts and nearshore waters?
Yeah, I think there's three things you can do. You can join Surfrider. We're a membership organization. It's $25 a year. It's like your Starbucks budget for a week. And that money supports our network, but most importantly, there's power in numbers. I'd love to be as influential as the NRA is for gun rights, for coastal protection, and that's because they have millions of members. We have 50,000. I want to grow that number. Two, get active. We're an activist-based organization. There's projects, there's beach cleanups, there's water quality monitoring, people going into schools. So go on our website, surfrider.org, and find the chapter near you, and you can roll up your sleeves and actually do something. It's a great community of people. So not only do you feel good about getting something done, you're going to meet some great people. And third is make a commitment to do some things individually. Get your reusable coffee mug, eliminate the straw, get rid of the bag. There's a lot of things that we as individuals can do to make a difference, and those catch on. People notice when you do those things. And so I think there's a bunch of different ways. As I said earlier, I love the fact that everything we're talking about, there's a solution to them. We just need to create enough will to get it done.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I like I said in the beginning, I really appreciate everything you guys do. As a surfer myself, I'm glad you're out there. I'm glad your organization's out there. I appreciate the time, and hopefully we can catch some waves someday together. But
absolutely, I'll look you up next time I'm at Wrightsville Beach. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share the story about Surfrider.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Take care.
You're in the water loop. Water loop, water loop, water loop.